Unsolved Mysteries is one of the most popular TV shows to air in recent times. Whether you were alive for the original airing of the show, or know about it through pop culture and true crime, we can all agree that everyone loves a good unsolved mystery to sink their teeth into. What's better than an unsolved mystery, though, is when a creepy historical mystery is finally solved, and those involved are granted much-needed closure. Number 5. Residents of Mount Vernon, New York awoke on the morning of Valentine's Day, 1988, with a sunny disposition and bright hopes for the day. However, at 11:54 a.m., the Mount Vernon Police Department responded to calls of a woman who was lying in a junkyard on Carlton Avenue in the city's industrial district. There were no clothes, shoes, or jewelry with the woman, and her body was transported to the Westchester County Medical Examiner's office for further forensic investigation. The coroner found that the woman had eaten broccoli shortly before her passing, and that there were traces of substances in her body as well. The coroner ruled the case as a homicide and began the process of identifying the woman so that her family and next of kin could be informed and arrangements could be made. But this is where they encountered a problem. The woman had no clothing or personal items that would have helped investigators identify her, and as the days passed, it became increasingly obvious that identifying her was going to be a large task. In absence of her true identity, she was dubbed the Mount Vernon Jane Doe, a name that she would carry for 33 years. A description of the woman was circulated, but nobody came forward to claim her. She was described as a white female between the ages of 18 and 25, with sandy blonde hair and hazel eyes. She was 5 feet tall to 5'6" and 90 to 120 pounds, and had an assortment of freckles and moles on her face. The coroner also noted that her teeth were in good condition, and no fillings or signs of decay were found. The years slowly ticked by, and still nobody came forward to claim the Mount Vernon Jane Doe. Then in 2021, the Westchester County District Attorney's Office reached out to the Westchester Department of Laboratories and Research and the Cold Case Bureau and requested that a new type of testing be undertaken on the unidentified woman. The laboratories used genetic material to perform genetic genealogical studies, and after months of hard work, they found a match. In August of 2021, the Westchester County District Attorney's Office stunned New York when they announced that Mount Vernon Jane Doe had finally been identified as 19-year-old Veronica Wiederhold of Brooklyn, New York. According to Veronica's family, she was last seen in 1987, and they had filed a missing persons report. However, no record of such a report has ever been found. That wasn't the only incredible break in the case, though, and the Westchester County District Attorney's Office also announced that they were closing in on the person responsible. However, they've refused to name their suspect at this time. Number 4. Marie Antoinette is one of France's most famous figures and has left a huge imprint on European history. But did you know that Marie is embroiled in one of history's longest-standing forensic mysteries? Between 1791 and 1792, Marie Antoinette was confined to her palace while the French Revolution was busy taking place outside of its walls. Marie and her husband, King Louis XVI, were the key targets of the revolution, and in an attempt to preserve the monarchy, they were being closely watched and protected. During this time, Marie still wanted to maintain contact with the outside world, and she did this by writing letters, the most notable of which was to Axel von Fersen, a Swedish count who was held in high regard in Sweden. These weren't just any old letters, though, and it's believed that Marie and Fersen were actually lovers, trying to hide their romance and feelings for each other in their letters. These letters exchanged hands numerous times, and in 1982, they were purchased by the French National Archives and displayed for all to see. These letters provided stunning insight into the life of Marie Antoinette and the potential affair she was having with another nobleman. However, historians quickly ran into a problem when analyzing the contents of these letters. Certain sections had been censored and redacted, making it hard to examine the true nature of their relationship. That's where the Conservation Research Center stepped in, and in 2021, they were granted permission to perform a forensic analysis on the mysterious letters for the first time in history. The analysis allowed the scientists to study the composition of the inks used to redact the words, which stunningly matched the ink used by Fersen in his letters. They were also able to reveal hidden words such as beloved, tender friend, adore, and madly. The scientists were able to conclude that it was Fersen who had redacted the letters. The team who worked on the analysis commented that this suggested that they were important to him, either for sentimental or political reasons. Number 3. 22-year-old Diana Hansen was a budding college student who had returned to her parents' home at the 6400 block of Desert Inn, Las Vegas. Diana spent the Christmas period with her family, and by December 30th, 1983, she was getting ready for the new year and getting ready to return to college to see what the new semester had in store for her. Sadly, Diana would never get to see the next semester, and when she left her parents' home at 4:30 p.m., she would mysteriously vanish. When Diana hadn't returned from her daily jog, her parents began to panic. They described their daughter as a sensible young woman who wouldn't have left without telling them where she was going. Her parents left their home and began looking for her, but found no sign of her. It wasn't until the next morning, December 31st, 1983, that her body was discovered in a desert area on West Spring Mountain Road. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police were called to the scene, and it was determined that Diana had likely been abducted on her jog before being disposed of in the desert area. There was evidence of a struggle at the scene, meaning that Diana had fought with her attacker, but sadly he managed to overpower her. Forensic investigators were able to recover DNA from her body, but without the proper means of analysis, this sample sat untouched for over 38 years. That was until 2021, when the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department reached out to Othram Inc., who are based in Texas. Othram Inc. works with law enforcement agencies to provide genetic genealogical analysis, and has been responsible for the identification of hundreds of suspects and John and Jane Does in the last few years. Through the use of genealogy and tips, Othram were able to track down Johnny Blake Peterson. Peterson had passed away in 1993. However, they were able to obtain familial samples for comparison, and found that Peterson's DNA matched the DNA found on Diana's body. Peterson is also connected to a similar crime that took place in 1979. This announcement came on December 6, 2021, and Diana's family have yet to comment. Number 2. 40-year-old Michael Allison Beavers kissed his wife goodbye in late November of 1979, telling her that he was leaving their home in Anchorage for Seattle to meet with a business partner. His wife was concerned about his 2,300-mile trip, but believed that she would be reunited with her husband when business was taken care of. Christmas of 1979 came and went, and Mrs. Beavers spent the holiday alone, hoping and praying that as she rang in the new year, her husband would walk through the door. But that day never came, and in January of 1980, Mrs. Beavers called the local police and reported her husband missing. An investigation was launched. However, by 1982, no headway had been made in Michael's case, and the case was closed, and Michael was declared deceased in absence, much to the dismay of Mrs. Beavers. On July 24, 1989, the remains of an adult male between the ages of 30 and 50 were discovered on Fire Island, which is located off the coast of Anchorage. The remains were in poor condition, and the initial police report noted that his passing was criminal in nature, and he had been lying exposed on the beach for at least a year. Despite their best efforts, the Anchorage Police Department were unable to identify the remains, and he became known as the Fire Island Jane Doe, a name that he would carry until 2021. Various attempts at DNA extraction and comparison were made by the Alaska Bureau of Investigation's Cold Case Unit. However, no match was ever found. Then, in 2021, the Cold Case Unit called in the help of Othram Inc., who are based in Texas. Othram Inc. extracted DNA from Fire Island Doe's bones and was able to create a broader DNA profile than the one previously available. By utilizing forensic genetic genealogical resources, they found a close relative and were able to obtain a DNA sample for comparison. The DNA sample obtained from Michael's close relative proved to be a match to the remains found on Fire Island in 1989. And finally, their doe had been identified. The Alaska Bureau of Investigation is still investigating Michael's case, and they're urging anyone with information to contact their Cold Case Investigation Unit at 907-375-7728. Number 1. On February 3, 1996, an armored car arrived at the Lil Champ's convenience store in Orlando, Florida, to collect the previous night's paperwork and money. As the guards approached the store, they noticed that the lights were off and the store was eerily quiet. This was out of the ordinary given the store's location and the fact that it was supposed to open at 6 a.m. As the guards tried to enter the store, they found that the door was locked and there were droplets of blood. Alarmed, the guard dialed 911 on a nearby phone and summoned the police to the scene. Upon entering the Lil Champ store, they found 31-year-old Terrence Paquette in the men's bathroom. They also found that $1,000 had been stolen from the store's safe and wondered whether this was a case of robbery gone wrong. There was evidence of a struggle throughout the store, and forensic investigators at the scene were able to obtain DNA samples from these swabs. Some of the DNA matched their victim, Terrence Paquette, with the others belonging to an unknown man. The Florida Crime Lab ran these samples through CODIS, hoping for a match, but nothing came up. Terrence's case quickly ran cold, and the media attention fizzled out, leaving Terrence's family without much needed answers. For 25 years, Terrence's family and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement clung to the hope that one day his case would be solved. In 2021, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement requested the assistance of Othram Inc. Othram was able to identify the parents of the suspect, which led them to Kenneth Stowe Jr. All the Florida Department of Law Enforcement needed now was a DNA sample from Kenneth Jr. to confirm the match. Detective Brian Savelli surveyed Kenneth Jr. and, after being granted a warrant to do so, performed a trash pull to obtain items that contained his DNA. Days after this match had been made, Kenneth Jr. was arrested, and an official statement was made to the public. They revealed that at the time of the crime, Kenneth Jr. lived in the apartment across the street from Terrence. He's currently being held and is awaiting trial. His legal team has refused to comment. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.